Hello, I'm Laura Agnew. I'm the clinical lead nurse in the Oxfordshire CAMHS Neurodevelopmental Condition Service, or NDC for short. I'm making this video to help you understand a little bit about what you might expect as your young person is known to the NDC service. The NDC service has two clear, distinct functions. The first, which might be why you are, know about our service, is around diagnostic assessments, where there's a wondering about possible autism and or ADHD for young people who have an Oxfordshire GP and are aged between 5 to 18. So we are the service who do most of those diagnostic assessments in Oxfordshire for young people. Not all, but most of them are completed by our service currently. And the other pathway is around assessment, around mental health needs and possible interventions for that for autistic young people or those young people who have ADHD or both. And that might include ADHD medication management. So we have a very large caseload of young people who are accessing ADHD meds, who we are responsible for initiating, getting them up to the right dose, and then reviewing them to make sure that that dose and medication is effective. And then we also provide for a smaller number of young people kind of mental health interventions, where that neurodivergent young person is going to need a very high level of adaptation because of their neurodivergent needs. So, they're going to need a lot of support to be able to access the treatment, basically. It's important to note that other CAMHS teams provide mental health assessment and interventions for neurodivergent young people as well. There are lots of neurodivergent young people across all of the different CAMHS teams in Oxfordshire. They don't all sit with the NDC service. The difference is that the young people that stay within the NDC, or that we see in NDC, are those young people who've got those really significant differences related to their neurodivergence. We thought it would be helpful to share a bit of information about who works in the NDC service. So although we support a very, very large number of young people across Oxfordshire, within the treatment pathway, but also many, many more young people who are on the diagnostic waiting list, you can see from this that we're actually a very small team, and many of us are part-time. And what this means is that the demand we have for diagnostic assessments, for consideration of ADHD treatment, for other interventions around mental health, that demand far outweighs the capacity that we have to respond in a timely way, which means that the waiting times are incredibly long. Another factor is that many of the clinicians work across both pathways, and what that means is if there is more need within the treatment side, so say there's lots of acuity and young people are really struggling, it might mean that we can't provide as many diagnostic assessments as we would like to, because we're having to focus some of the resource into the treatment pathway. So this slide just explains a bit about the referral pathway. Many of you might know what this is, having been through it already. But just to clarify, so for consideration of a neurodevelopmental assessment, all requests that come from outside of CAMHS, so that might be from parent carers, from schools, GPs or other professionals, all those referrals come into the CAMHS single point of access, or SPA. And that's for queries about potential neurodivergence, but also around mental health concerns. They all go into the CAMHS SPA, who collate lots of information from a range of places, such as from parent carers, from schools, sometimes from the young person if that's appropriate, or other professionals who have been involved. And then they make decisions based on the information that's been shared with us. It's important to note that if there are mental health needs highlighted alongside potential neurodivergence, a young person might be transferred to more than one CAMHS pathway. So for example, they might come to the NDC service to be added to the diagnostic waiting list for an assessment around possible autism, but they might also be passed to the Getting Help team for an anxiety assessment and possible intervention if those needs are evident in that referral process. Sadly, the demand that we have in Oxfordshire is very, very significant. So as you can see here, currently that's about 130 referrals a month that we get for diagnostic assessments. And that means that the number of referrals we get are just much greater than the amount of assessments we can do. And sadly, that means that month on month, waiting times do increase for diagnostic assessments. As clinicians who work within this pathway, within the NDC service, we're very sad and very conscious about the impact long waits have on families and young people. We really do care about the fact that people are having to wait such a long time. We try our best with what we have, and we try to be creative and make sure we're being as efficient as we possibly can, but the current resource we have in the service just will not meet the demand that there is, which means sadly that the waiting times do keep increasing. For consideration of mental health assessments or intervention, the process is exactly the same to come in through the single point of access for outside of CAMHS, and I should have mentioned that also we accept referrals from other CAMHS teams. So if a young person is seen, let's say in the mental health support team, and they feel that there's possible neurodivergence for the young person, they can refer directly to us. So it doesn't have to mean a further referral coming in from school or parents if a CAMHS team is already involved. This might be the most important slide that I'm going to share with you in this video, and it's about what's available for you right now. So hopefully you'll have all received an email from us welcoming you into the service and explaining all of the different things that you can access straight away. We send that out to all parent carers when a young person has been accepted into the NDC service, either for a diagnostic assessment or for treatment. So I'd really encourage you to look back for that and have a look through it if you haven't already. It's really important to check your junk mail. Sometimes emails from us go into people's junk mails, which is not helpful. So keep an eye out for it if you haven't received it already. The Living Well with Neurodivergence support offer is the main provision we have in Oxfordshire for parent carers and young people who are neurodivergent or potentially neurodivergent. It's run in collaboration with Autism Oxford, and it's a really, really great provision that's got some excellent feedback from people that have used it around helping them develop their understanding of autism and ADHD, and also providing support. So on the Living Well website, there's a huge range of resources, videos, webinars around kind of the essentials of autism and ADHD, as well as some specific differences or challenges people might have, such as eating concerns, demand avoidance, school-based difficulties. So it's really great because it's accessible whenever you want to be able to go on there and watch those videos. The other part of the offer is around some online and face-to-face groups and one-to-one support provisions for parent carers. Again, they often have a focus. Sometimes there's peer support, sometimes they're moderated by clinicians. The one-to-one spaces are often with a particular professional, so say an OT or an educational specialist that you can book in to get some advice from. And they also run a support group, like a youth group type approach for young people. There's one in the south and one in the north each month. They are always fully booked with a waiting list, so they're very well received. Next, we have our Sharon platform. So Sharon stands for Support, Hope and Recovery Online Network, and it's an online platform for parent carers to connect with each other, ask questions, share experiences, share advice, and have a network really to be there with each other. There are moderators, so clinicians like myself are on there every day to signpost and give advice as needed. And we're very fortunate because our platform is shared across Berkshire and Buckinghamshire as well. So we've got a huge wealth of experience and knowledge with the parent carers that are on that platform. Within the NDC service, we've developed some videos which are for parent carers around kind of different challenges a young person might have who's neurodivergent or potentially neurodivergent. So for example, around anxiety, emotional regulation, and there's also a series of videos on there aimed at neurodivergent teenagers who are anxious. So if that's your young person, they might want to look at them, or you could sit with them and look at the videos together. And they all provide a bit of information and then some strategies about what you can do to help with those challenges you might be having. And finally, there's the NDC Support Navigator. So we've developed this because we recognise that figuring out what to do and where to go can be really difficult. So we wanted to make a simple, easy to follow document that can help parent carers know if they've got a query about education, let's say, what to do about that. If they're worried about social care involvement, how to go about that. So we've put that all in one place to hopefully help you know what's available and how to access those things. Finally, I just wanted to say that if you have concerns about your young person's physical or mental health, please do make an appointment to discuss these with your GP. They'll then be able to review what's happening and make referrals into appropriate services as needed for your young person. We thought it would be helpful to share a bit more information about what a diagnostic assessment process looks like within our service. So we recognise, because young people are often waiting a very, very long time before we're able to see them, that the information that's held within the referral is often out of date. So the first step we do is we reach out to parent carers and schools to provide us with some more detailed, up-to-date information about the young person. And this information helps us decide what type of assessment is needed for that young person. So for some young people who are waiting for a diagnostic assessment, there's lots of evidence and lots of knowing about them probably being neurodivergent. And it's quite clear that that's what's going on. Whereas for other young people, it's not so clear, or they might have had other experiences which might explain some of their differences. So they might need a slightly different sort of assessment. But for everybody, every young person that we'll see for a diagnostic assessment, these next two bits will happen. So there will be a developmental history whereby information is gathered from parent carers about that young person's life. From probably just before they were born up until now, we want to know in as much detail as you can share with us how they've been, what their strengths have been, what things they've found difficult, so that we get a really clear picture and sense of them throughout their life. The other thing that we'll always offer is an observation of the young person. So that might be a structured observation. So for an autism assessment, that might be something called an ADOS, which is a set of tasks and questions, which is very standardized. Or it might be a less structured observation where we're engaging in a slightly different way with the young person, again, depending on the young person's needs and what's going to work for them. Sometimes those are offered in person, sometimes they're offered online. Just depends on the provision in the service, the appointments we have available, and actually what's going to work best for the young person or the family. So they're the things we think about. There's always a bit of choice. So if we offered an online assessment and you felt that wouldn't be helpful for your young person, please tell us and we will change that to be a face-to-face one if that's going to be most helpful. We want it to be a useful experience for everybody and for us to be able to get the information we need. So when those things have happened, there's always a multidisciplinary discussion. That means that 2, 3, 4, 5 people who've been involved around the young person's assessment or completing another young person's assessment at the same time, we get together and have a conversation, share the information that we've discovered and come to a conclusion together about the outcome of that diagnostic assessment. And we feed back that decision as soon as we possibly can to the family and to the young person if that's appropriate and they want to be involved. So we try and do it on the same day if we've got all the information that we need. But sometimes we don't have it all and we have to go away and get some other bits of information, or we might need something else to happen first. But we'll do it as quickly as we can because we know you've been waiting a really long time and we want to let you know the outcome as soon as we can. Within that feedback session, we'll also signpost to relevant support as needed. And then what happens is you'll get a report detailing the assessment that's happened and any recommendations that we're making for your young person. It's important to note that most young people are discharged from the NDC service following their diagnostic assessment, unless there's a significant mental health need. If there's a significant mental health need, but the young person doesn't need a high level of adaptation, we may refer into one of the other CAMHS teams, or they might stay with us if it's around possible ADHD medication, or there's a bigger need around adaptation for their neurodivergence. Just wanted to overview about the types of interventions that many CAMHS teams can provide. So psychosocial interventions are around working either directly with the young person or their family or the wider network, and often they've got a specific focus, so that might be around anxiety management, emotional regulation, distress behaviour. Sometimes we work further out than family or wider network, depends what's the situation for the young person, but it's more about that kind of specific targeted need that we're thinking about. There's obviously a remit for medication for some young people that are seen within CAMHS. It's important to note that there is not a medication for autism. Autism is not a mental health illness that doesn't need treatment. However, there is a treatment for ADHD symptoms. It's important for you to know that with regards to ADHD, the guidance nationally is that it's for moderate to severe ADHD symptoms, where we would consider ADHD treatment through medication, and we would be expecting there to be appropriate support in place at home and school first for a minimum of 6 months before we would consider ADHD medication for a young person. However, even if those things are there and we think the medication might be helpful, it's not always appropriate for the young person. There's sometimes quite significant side effects, or it doesn't fit with them, or they've got other factors that might mean that ADHD medication isn't appropriate for them. So we have to think very carefully about ADHD medication for young people. And then finally, this multi-agency liaison and advocacy is about developing a really good, clear understanding of the needs of the young person, why they do what they do, what support they might need, and sharing that with the network around them to ensure that everybody is thinking about that young person's needs and what they can do to support them. And the reason that's so important, particularly for neurodivergent young people, is that sometimes, often maybe, things that are going on in the environment around them will be affecting how they're feeling. And if we don't address those things in the environment first, any other intervention or treatment that might be offered is probably going to be less effective. And finally, here's a couple of links to some of the web pages I've mentioned. The Living Well with Neurodivergence, that's the offer with Autism Oxford around support you can access right now. And there's the link to our YouTube channel, which has got a range of videos for parent carers and some for young people. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and we look forward to seeing you and your young person as soon as we can.